In 1987, a Soviet economist named Nikolai Shmelev published something that should have been impossible. He wrote an article called Advances in Debts that laid bare the fatal flaws in the Soviet economy. No propaganda, no optimism, just brutal honesty about a system that was dying from within. Western experts dismissed it. The CIA predicted the Soviet Union would continue as a superpower for decades. Even Soviet citizens couldn't imagine their empire vanishing. 4 years later, on December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. Shmelev wasn't a prophet, he was a pattern recognizer. He saw a sequence, a specific chain of failures that has destroyed every global superpower for the last 500 years. Here's what should terrify you. That same pattern, those same stages, that same sequence. The United States has already completed 5 of 7. We're not approaching danger, we're deep inside it. This is the story of how empires die, why they always think they're different, and why the historical data suggest America might be next. Imperial collapse doesn't start with invasion. It starts with economic exhaustion. The empire extends beyond sustainability. Wars on multiple fronts. Promises it cannot keep. Debts it cannot repay. At first, the decline is invisible. Currency still works, military still wins, government still governs. But beneath the surface, the foundation cracks. Resources misallocated, productive capacity shrinking. Then comes the acceleration. Trade partners seek alternatives. Reserve currency status erodes. And suddenly, the advantages that made you powerful become vulnerabilities. Your currency, once demanded globally, comes flooding back home, causing hyperinflation. Your military, spread across the world, becomes unsustainable. Your promises, once guaranteed by strength, become empty words. This isn't theoretical. This is the documented death sequence of Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. They believed their power was permanent. They overextended militarily. They debased their currency. They refused to accept reality until collapse became inevitable. And they all made exactly the same decisions in exactly the same order that America is making right now. After Columbus reaches the Americas in 1492, Spain conquers the Aztec and Inca empires and discovers something unprecedented: mountains of silver. The Potosi silver mine in Bolivia, discovered in 1545, becomes the richest mine in history. By 1600, Spanish silver production peaks at 2,700 tons annually, more than all other mines in the world combined. Spain controls the money supply of Europe. The Spanish real becomes the global reserve currency. Everyone needs Spanish silver. This is where the pattern begins. Stage 1. Military overextension. King Philip II has more money than any monarch in history, and he spends it everywhere. Spain fights wars on 4 continents simultaneously: against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, a war lasting 80 years, against England's navy, including the disastrous Spanish Armada of 1588, wars in the Philippines, wars in the Americas. By 1580, half of Spain's revenue goes to the military. And still, it isn't enough. Stage 2. Currency debasement. Spanish taxes can't keep pace with spending, so they do what every failing empire does. They debase the currency. They start mixing copper into silver coins. A coin that's supposed to be pure silver becomes 50% copper, then 75% copper. Face value stays the same. Real value plummets. By 1600, Spanish silver coins contain barely any silver. Merchants stop accepting them at face value, triggering an inflation crisis across Europe, the price revolution of the 16th century. Stage 3. Debt spiral. Spain borrows aggressively from European bankers, and in 1557, Philip II declares bankruptcy. They restructure and continue borrowing. Goes bankrupt again in 1575. Restructure, continue borrowing. Bankruptcy again in 1596. 3 bankruptcies in 40 years. Each time they promise reforms. Each time they return to borrowing and spending. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. Here's the paradox. All that silver destroyed Spain's economy. When you have unlimited money, you stop producing. Why grow food when you can import it? Why build ships when you can buy them? Why innovate when you can just spend? Spanish nobility considered work beneath them. Manufacturing declined, agriculture stagnated. All the wealth flowed to importing goods from France, Italy, and the Netherlands. Spain became a conduit. Wealth flowed through them, but none stayed. As a Venetian ambassador observed, the treasure from the West Indies produces the same effect as rain on a roof. It pours down, and the first to be hit cannot profit. By 1600, Spain produces almost nothing, entirely dependent on imports, entirely dependent on silver to pay for everything. When the silver mines begin to deplete in the early 1600s, the entire system collapses. Stage 5. Social decay and imperial collapse. With the economy failing, beggars fill the streets of Madrid. The productive citizens immigrate to France, England, the Netherlands, countries that are building, creating, growing. Spain is left with bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests. No one creating wealth, everyone consuming it. By 1640, Spain loses Portugal. By 1650, the Netherlands, their richest territory, breaks free. By 1700, the Spanish Empire is a shell, still large on paper, economically dead. They went from the world superpower to a secondary power in less than a century. Spain today is a pleasant, cultured European country, but on the world stage, irrelevant. That's what imperial collapse looks like. Let's move 300 years forward to Britain. At its height, Britain controls 25% of the world's land surface. 400 million subjects, the pound sterling is the global reserve currency. Every major trade contract is in pounds. Every central bank holds British bonds. London is the financial center of the world. Just like Spain, they believe it's permanent. But they're already following the pattern. Stage 1. Military overextension. By 1900, Britain has military commitments on 6 continents: India, Africa, Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean. When World War I starts in 1914, Britain borrowed over 40 billion pounds, equivalent to $1 trillion today. They borrowed heavily, mostly from the United States. By 1918, the creditor had become the debtor. They'd won the war, kept the empire. They thought they could rebuild. They were wrong. Stage 2. Currency debasement. The pound was supposed to be backed by gold, but the war drained Britain's gold reserves, shipped to America to pay for weapons, food, supplies. By 1920, Britain's gold reserves are half what they were in 1914. In 1925, they go back on the gold standard at the pre-war rate. The problem is the pound is overvalued. British exports become too expensive. Manufacturing declines, unemployment rises. By 1931, they can't hold it anymore. Britain abandons the gold standard. The pound loses 25% of its value overnight. The global reserve currency had just admitted it couldn't keep its promises. Stage 3. Debt spiral. Britain never recovered from World War I debt. Then, World War II starts. Another $220 billion in costs. More borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain owes the United States and Canada over 30 billion pounds, more than Britain's entire GDP. The war was won, but the empire was finished. Stage 4. Loss of empire. In 1947, Britain gives up India. The crown jewel, the source of wealth for 200 years. Gone. Over the next 20 years, they lose everything. Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire exists only in history books. Stage 5. Currency collapse. The pound kept falling. 1940, $4.03. 1950, $2.80. The global reserve currency became a regional currency. Britain tries to maintain the pretense. Permanent seat on the UN Security Council, nuclear weapons, special relationship with America, but everyone knows the truth. They're a former power, a museum of what used to be great.
After World War II, the USSR emerges as a superpower. Nuclear weapons, massive military, control over Eastern Europe, satellites in space. They believe they're the future. For 45 years, they compete with America, but beneath the surface, the economy is dying. Stage 1. Military overextension. The Soviet Union spends 15 to 20% of GDP on the military, triple what America spends. With a fraction of the economy, they're in Afghanistan, propping up Cuba, Syria, Vietnam, North Korea, Angola, Ethiopia. Everywhere America has influence, they must counter. The cost is unsustainable. Stage 2. Economic stagnation. The Soviet economy stops growing in the 1970s. Oil revenue keeps them afloat, but nothing else works. Factories produce junk, farms fail, technology falls decades behind. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union is importing grain. A country with some of Earth's best farmland can't feed itself. Why? Because central planning doesn't work. Innovation dies under control. No one produces when there's no incentive. Stage 3. Currency collapse. The ruble was never a real currency. It couldn't be exchanged internationally. Even Soviet citizens didn't trust it. They used dollars when they could. The government had to buy foreign goods with gold and oil because nobody wanted rubles. By 1985, oil prices drop. Gold reserves deplete. They're running out of real money. Stage 4. Loss of empire. In 1989, the Berlin Wall falls. Eastern Europe leaves in a cascade. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany, all gone within a year. The Soviet government can't stop it. They're broke. Stage 5. Complete collapse. December 26, 1991. The Soviet Union ceases to exist. No war, no invasion, just economic implosion. The military can't be paid. The government can't function. The ruble becomes worthless. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear warheads collapses from internal economic failure. And here's the terrifying part. From the moment Gorbachev admitted the system was failing to complete dissolution, less than 7 years. The pattern played out again. Overextension, currency failure, debt, loss of empire, collapse. America is following the script. Stage 1. Military overextension. The United States has over 750 military bases in 80 countries, troops in 150 countries. We're committed to defending all of Europe through NATO, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Israel, and Middle Eastern allies. Taiwan, unofficially. We're countering China in the Pacific, Russia in Europe, Iran in the Middle East. Our military budget is $850 billion annually, more than the next 9 countries combined. And it's not enough. We're stretched thin. If China invades Taiwan, Russia pushes into NATO territory, and Iran closes the Persian Gulf simultaneously, we cannot respond to all of it. We're overextended, just like Spain, Britain, and the USSR. Stage 2. Currency debasement. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar became pure fiat currency. Since 2000, the money supply has increased 400%. Since 2020, we've printed over $6 trillion. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. We're not mixing copper into silver coins. We're printing unlimited paper. The mechanism is different. The result is the same. Debasement. Stage 3. Debt spiral. As of October 2025, the United States owes $37.85 trillion. That's 130% of GDP. Interest payments alone are approaching $1 trillion per year, more than we spend on defense. We're spending more on interest than defending the country. We run deficits every year, $1.6 trillion in FY 2025. During peacetime, in a growing economy, we borrow to pay interest on previous borrowing. That's the textbook definition of a debt spiral. Spain defaulted 3 times. Britain borrowed until collapse. The USSR ran out of money. We're on the same path. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. America doesn't make things anymore. We design, we finance, we consume, but we don't produce. Our manufacturing base has been gutted, shipped to China, Mexico, Vietnam. We import $800 billion more than we export annually. We're dependent on foreign supply chains for everything. Medicine, 90% from abroad. Electronics, mostly China. Steel, 50+% imported. Even military components. Just like Spain became dependent on imports while silver flowed out, we're dependent on imports while dollars flow out. When the money stops flowing, we're in trouble. Stage 5. Social decay. Trust in institutions at all-time lows. Crime rising in major cities. Drug overdoses, 100,000 Americans annually. Fertility rates are collapsing. Political dysfunction is total. We can't agree on anything, can't fix anything, can't build anything. The signs of decay are everywhere, but everyone pretends it's fine. It's not fine. Stages 6 and 7. What comes next? Stage 6. Loss of reserve currency status. This is when allies start diversifying, when trade moves to other currencies, when the dollar comes flooding back home again because nobody needs to hold it anymore. We're seeing early signs, like the BRICS nations developing alternatives, central banks buying record amounts of gold, China and Russia trading in yuan and rubles, Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for oil sales. The cracks are forming. When stage 6 accelerates, it happens fast. Countries that hold dollars start dumping them. The value collapses, import prices explode, the standard of living craters, and the government that used to borrow in its own currency suddenly can't. Stage 7. Collapse. Not gradual decline, sudden implosion. The Soviet Union went from superpower to non-existent in less than 7 years once the pattern was in motion. Britain lost the empire in 20 years after World War I broke it. Spain took a century, but the result was the same. 3 empires followed this pattern: Spain, Britain, the USSR. Each believed they were exceptional. Each believed they were different. Each believed the rules didn't apply to them. They were wrong every single time. We're telling ourselves the same lies right now. We're different. We have technology. We have the dollar. We're America. But the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The pattern is mathematical. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot maintain empire without productive capacity. You cannot debase your currency without consequences. The sequence is locked in. The only question is timing, but the pattern says collapse is coming. And when it comes, it won't be slow. A currency crisis triggers a debt crisis, triggers a political crisis. Overnight, the superpower becomes a cautionary tale. The reserve currency becomes a regional currency. The empire becomes a memory. 3 times it's happened before. The pattern says we're next. Since 2020, we've accelerated every stage. Printed more money, increased debt, extended military commitments, hollowed out production, fractured society. We're not walking the path anymore. We're sprinting down it. Maybe we'll find a way out. Maybe America can do what Spain, Britain, and the USSR couldn't. Maybe we'll reform, rebuild, restore. Maybe this time really is different, but the pattern says otherwise. The math says otherwise. And history, which has watched empires die the same way over and over, says we're about to learn the lesson the hard way. The warning signs are there. The pattern is clear. The question is whether anyone will listen before it's too late. History doesn't repeat. It warns. If you've seen the pattern forming, don't just scroll past it. Comment what stage you think we're in right now. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next episode reveals the exact indicators that mark the point of no return.